All right, everyone. Welcome to Current World Problems, our first lecture that we're going to be doing together, or the video format at least. If you guys remember of what we were doing before school got closed last week, we were actually talking about journalism, we were talking about mass media, so I figured it would be a good idea of having an overview of this topic and also reviewing what we've learned so far. And I want to answer the main question of what is the purpose of a free press and why is it so important? So let's talk about what the press actually is. The press has a nickname, and the nickname is that it is the fourth estate. Where does this nickname come from? Well, hopefully you guys remember from last year, and we were talking about the French Revolution. There was the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. The first estate being the clergy, or the church, second estate being the nobility, and the third estate being everybody else, the commoners. That was 97% of people. And journalism was considered so important back in this time period. Remember, it's called the press because of the printing press, where you actually had to press ink down onto a piece of paper. And this really led to the first newspapers, the first things called almanacs, the first books, the first ways that the average person could receive news. Because the way that it used to work is that basically, well, someone would tell you what happened and that was it. The fact that people could actually read for themselves of what was happening was a big deal. And let's talk about why exactly it's a big deal. So what's the purpose of journalism? Why do we even have it in the first place? Well, the importance of journalism is first and foremost to inform the public. People have to know what's going on in the world. Second, it's to seek the truth. We should always be looking for what is true and what is actually going on, even if we don't like the answer. And then finally, to keep politicians and other powerful people accountable. This is why I have a picture of Richard Nixon over there. This is one of the reasons I have him up there is just because he was a powerful person, the president of the United States, probably the most powerful person in the world, and he was actually brought down by the press in something called the Watergate scandal. This is why every scandal in this point in history always has to have the suffix gate attached to it. And it comes from the Watergate Hotel, where Nixon actually had sent a group of people he had hired. They were called the plumbers. He kind of had this like shadowy secret organization, and they actually went to the Watergate Hotel, which is where the Democratic National Committee headquarters were, and he actually asked them to bug their hotel or have like a little speaker put into their conference room so he could know what his opponents in the election coming up were going to be doing. So because he did this and he was caught by two journalists, and their names were Woodward and Bernstein, and that's how the story first got out. But there's also somebody in his administration who gave those two journalists the truth about all this. And it was a whole big scandal, and it actually ended up removing the president from his office. So it just went to go to show how powerful the press really can be. So what are some of the negatives, though, of a free press? Well, as I have down there, that is a supermarket tabloid I remember seeing back when I was a kid called the Weekly World News. And they would post pretty crazy stories, usually about aliens, sometimes about Batboy down there too. Just the craziest headlines that basically had no basis in reality. And this is sometimes what you still see today. Stories don't need to be truthful to be popular. Just using something as an example is that basically you can say almost whatever you want about most politicians, and you usually won't get in trouble for that. Things don't have to be truthful to be popular. You especially see this on social media. The race to be the first to report a big story can lead to sloppy reporting. If everybody wants to get a big scoop and they want to be the first person to put it on their website, so people want to go to that website, well, in the rush to find a big story, there can be all sorts of errors made. So that is a big problem, and that's a problem with the free press. Also, it's very difficult to successfully sue somebody for lying. Defamation is what you would sue them for. Defamation just means communicating a false statement that injures somebody's reputation. Slander would be spoken defamation, and libel would be written defamation. The problem with defamation and proving it in court is that you have to prove that the writer or the speaker of the defamation actually knew they were lying when they were doing it, which is very, very, very difficult to prove in court. So because of that, there aren't as many consequences for lying as maybe you think there would be. Of course, there can be all sorts of damage to your reputation as a journalist. People will stop, hopefully, buying your stories. Or your paper would hopefully fire you for doing something like that. But it's very hard to prove it in a court of law. So what does good journalism look like? Why do we have good journalism? And I have right there, that's called the Pulitzer Prize. That's awarded based on good reporting. So good reporting and good journalism, what does it look like? The truth always is put first before opinions. The real objective facts of the story are always communicated first. That's why we have what's called the opinion pages in newspapers back when those existed. It's basically you have a place to put the news. This is what actually happened, and then you have your opinions. This is how we're going to interpret the news. So that's what good journalism always looks like. Truth first before opinion. Stories can be verified. It's not just, hey, I have this amazing scoop. I saw aliens, but I have no proof. If you did actually see aliens, that would be an amazing story, and I'd like to hear about it. But these stories need to be verified. Number 3, reporters must be independent from the people that they cover. That's why journalists, won't be in relationships with the people that they end up covering. This is why if you're a journalist and then your dad runs for president, well, you probably shouldn't report on that and call it objective journalism because you are biased in that way. It must be interesting and relevant. So that just speaks for itself. It has to both be interesting to the public and relevant to their interests. It must foster both critique and compromise. That's important. To where there could be, it could happen to where a politician does something that's controversial, maybe environmentally, and you must report on it in a way that's critical, but also leaves room for compromise. This is what they argued for, and then people can go after those ideas rather than the person. It must always have good intent behind it. Good journalism never goes after somebody with the intent to ruin their life. If somebody has done something to where their life will be ruined by publishing it, well, that's something different. But it must always have good intentions behind it. That is the end of my PowerPoint presentation for today. Next time we are going to be talking about the wonderful and wacky world of conspiracy theories, and hopefully you learn something a little bit different. When it comes to today and what I want you to do until Wednesday, which is the next time I'm going to be posting a video, is that there is going to be an assignment. If you are in my class, this goes for you. There is going to be an assignment in Microsoft Teams. I expect you all to read and turn that in by Wednesday. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and I will see you next time.